Hello, everyone. Welcome to one more podcast for the Athletic School. Today, our guest speaker is Don Moxley. He's the director of applied science at Longevity Labs and the developer of HRV Plus. He's a former captain and Big Ten champion at Ohio State. And today, we're going to be talking about performance. Don, thanks so much for joining me. It's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk to you and your tribe.
Awesome, awesome. So let's right jump to the questions. Performance is a topic that I think a lot of athletes are trying to always improve and and get better in a way and try to perform more in school, in sports, in life in general,
Sure.
right? So my first question for you, I think is what does performance means to you? You have been working on that for a long time right now, and I think sometimes we don't even know what performance means, so, because I feel like a lot of people they have a different perspective of what performance really is.
So for me, performance is a process. It is not a destination. It's constantly putting in processes to improve operational efficiencies. That if you're an athlete, performance is your ability to show up and train and compete. Um, the number one thing that interferes with performance for an athlete is injury. So much of your training and so much of what you do needs to be calibrated around, okay, how do I get stronger? How do I get to the point where I can engage in the competitive landscape more effectively and more efficiently? Um, Igor, a lot of times we look at performance from a physiology standpoint or from a psychology standpoint, both very important. I tend to look as a coach, I look at it as an economics perspective. Is that what am I getting in return for this investment of energy that I'm making? That if you have if you're when you're old like me, you have investments, and you look at, okay, is if I put $1 in, what am I getting out? And I think many times with performance, it's that economics look that I think people miss, that too many times you see people just burning the house down trying to get better performance, and it's like, well, no, you probably should have stopped when the smoke detector went off, instead of burning the whole house down. So that's how I look at it over time.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot. And that makes a lot of sense because for me as an athlete, it's hard to say and to decide when to stop, because we think that just doing more is going to help us. But sometimes, I have a day off and then I go back to the field and then I perform much better because I was resting the day before, you
Right.
know.
Well,
And I think we, as athletes, Mhm. Go ahead.
I agree with you, and so the challenge is, when we start to get tired, when we're engaged in the process, one of the things that our body gives us is a little signaling molecule called dopamine, and dopamine reinforces hard work. Um, and and I get it. I know where it comes from. It's fun to just pour yourself into a training or something like that and walk away. I'll tell you, I remember when I was wrestling in college, I walked out of the weight room several times and I would sit in my car with my hands in my lap because I couldn't pick them up to touch the steering wheel. I was just so tired. I had to sit there and just to get my hands back up on the steering wheel. Well, what we've learned over time, and again, that's fun. It's a lot of hard work. It feeds the ego. It does all those things. You get a little dopamine, but when you look at it from a position of economics, the benefit of the training session was achieved long before the extended fatigue was set in. And when you're training, what's so important is you need to take a step back and not, what is it that I can do, but when I'm training, what is the trigger? What is the signal I'm trying to generate in order to get my body to respond and get stronger? We call this hormesis. What is the stimulus that breaks up the the platform of that breaks our homeostasis is the word I was looking for. Sorry about that. Um, but
Hmm.
and anything after the trigger is wasted energy. And from an athlete, we rarely have enough time for everything that we need to do. There's always some, boy, I wish I could have done that, or I wish I could have done that. And when we look at all the domains of athlete performance, it's important to say, okay, where did I get the trigger, and walk away, and go do something else. Go do something else that contributes to performance. And I think this is a, again, I like to use terms of economics to describe, the modern training environment, and what kind of metrics can we put on this to see, am I getting better? Um, one of the challenges, Igor, is that we've got a lot of metrics out there that frankly are not, I deal with a term that I call key performance indicators, KPIs. And around sports, whether it's in the weight room or out on the field or on the court, a lot of times there's these things that we look at, like 40 time in football. 40 time is not a valuable KPI. It does not predict success. Um, in the weight room, bench press does not predict success. Your best bench pressers are probably not your best athletes. Um, so it's really important that we put indicators in place that am I making progress towards a goal that's realistic, and how am I measuring that progress?
Hmm. That's interesting, and I gotta watch out for those triggers because I think it makes a lot of sense.
Sure,
And just when you were talking, I was thinking about it, and I love the KPIs as well because I'm a goalkeeper for soccer,
sure,
and a lot of the times coaches think that they're gonna make us run, but then it doesn't help my team, for me as a goalkeeper, to be able to run 2 miles in 12 minutes. That in terms of becoming a better goalkeeper, that doesn't help me at all. It doesn't help the team. Doesn't help anyone. So a lot of the times we'll look at the keepers and we'll see like, oh no, he can run 2 miles in 12 minutes. Like, okay, and then what? That Can he save a ball when someone's gonna kick at him?
sure. And listen,
And
this
yeah, and
in swimming, so many times I see in swimming, I see coaches warming the sprinters up with the distance people. It's like warming your sprinters on the track up with your marathoners. It's a completely different game. It's a
mhm,
completely different physiology. Now, from a coaching standpoint, it's a lot easier to say, okay, everybody in the pool, give me 3,000 meters. Let's go ahead and get warmed up. Um, but to segment that to where your keepers are doing one thing, your defensemen are doing another, your attackers are doing a third. Yeah, all these positions have KPIs. And again, I think this is where sports science really gives us the ability to start to target, in soccer, we love these catapult systems right now where we see movement of players on the field, and acceleration and so forth. And
mhm,
I don't want to take away from that at all. That's a very valuable thing. I don't think it says much to you. I mean, I'd rather have a big camera behind my goalies looking at where shots are coming from, how are they reacting, let's find their weak spots and train that weak spot. And I think this applies to any sport or any athlete. Identify the weakness, invest time there, but if you're not actively seeking that weak spot and developing a KPI that you can hang on that, well, then you're probably missing an opportunity to succeed.
mhm. Awesome, and I think that will change a lot of people's mind in terms of what performance is and how they can improve.
Sure.
So my next question for you is, do you believe you can perform in a high level for a long period of time?
In the absence of injury, yes. So this we talked about this earlier, that the thing that's going to prevent you from achieving that goal is injury. We're seeing cardiovascular athletes really excel. So we're used to seeing, good athletes come in that 18 to 25 range, coming out of college, right out of college. But we're starting to see cardiovascular athletes really blossom at 35, 40 years old, where they're really able to drill in the metabolism. We see it with some strength athletes. Um, so I do believe, and I think you have to look at longevity as a performance tool, in a performance window,
Hmm.
that whether I'm doing a talk to a conference on longevity, or I'm doing a talk to a conference on sport performance, I still have the same anchors. I still deal with, you've got to move correctly, move better. You hack that with exercise. You need nutrient dense food for the system to work. It's more than proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. The micronutrients are critical, and I think we have to focus. You hack that with supplements. Whether you're an athlete or an athlete's parent, sleep is critical. Sleep is critical to success. It's critical to recovery. You can't hack sleep, but you can hack the sleep environment. So you can do things to make that sleep environment, understand circadian rhythms, understand these, and reinforce them. And then finally, light, getting light on your skin. Light, I think, is a nutrient. Now, I call those my four big rocks that go in the jar. The jar, though, the jar is your purpose. Um, that there's a lot of
Hmm.
environmental forces pushing us away from moving, pushing us away from nutrient dense food. There's a lot of environmental forces messing with our sleep and our circadian rhythm cycles. And then we're constantly in a situation where we don't get enough light on our skins. So you've got to have a purpose. So if that's a goal, whether, back as an athlete, I had a goal of winning tournaments and winning things like this. And with that goal, I had motivation to sacrifice things in the environment. Um, I would not miss a workout, even though I had other social pressures. I would not miss a workout. Once I got all my workouts in, I got that all done. Then we can go ahead and bring in social and things like that. And the same thing holds true now in longevity. I use the term. I try not to use this one too much, but how do you want to die? Do you want to die in a hospital hooked to tubes, or, what? I hope when I'm, something past 90 years old, maybe I'm hiking the edge of the Grand Canyon and I slip and I do a ride into the ground and it's a good trip on the way down, but I don't, so that goal for me is to be a great grandfather, is to be that crazy guy that comes into a wrestling room. I'm 61 years now, old now. And I still, 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to go wrestle with my nephew who had qualified for the Florida State High School Wrestling Tournament. You know what? I did pretty good for the first day. Second day was a disaster. I was good for a day, but I want to at least maintain that and be that crazy ass wrestler that can walk into the room and teach when I'm 80 and 90 years old. That's only that's only 20 years from now.
Hmm.
Um, that's not that 20 years goes really
Yeah,
fast.
yeah, I imagine. I don't want to go off the topic too much, but you said something really important about how do you want to die.
Yeah.
And I saw a video of David Goggins talking about, why he goes that crazy, and then he gave a little story. He said, imagine you die and then you go to heaven, and then once you get there, you meet with God, whatever, if you believe it or not, that's not the
Mhm.
point. And then God give you pictures and shows you like, look, this is who you were meant to be, and do all those crazy things and all these achievements. But because you choose to, sit on your couch or stuff like that, when you decided not to work out and miss a workout and do the other things, you didn't, you know. And I think that relates a lot with what you said, and I love that.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not a big one on regret or I'm not a big one for regret. You want to enjoy every minute. You don't know. Listen, we don't know when we're going to exit
Hmm.
this place, but uh, I want to make
Hmm.
sure that in the moment I'm doing what I'm meant to do, and it's why we're doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So go back to the topic of performance. You mentioned four things, and I was gonna ask you about that. You know, things that you found out studying performance. What are some of the things that helps athletes improve their performance? And you mentioned four. Can you name those four again, please?
Yeah, I think the four big rocks are movement, which you hack with exercise. Now, you can hack exercise too. I love some of the modern modalities that have developed, like things like blood flow restriction training. I think this is an amazing tool. And Igor, I come from a training background. I don't know if your audience has heard of a thing called West Side Barbell. It's a place in Columbus, Ohio, where the strongest people in the world train. And I got to cut my teeth
Hmm.
studying with Lou Simmons back in the back before West Side was West Side. We used to train. We used to train till we again. I couldn't pick my hands up to grab the steering wheel. Um, but now that we understand that we trained because we thought that was the signal. We thought the greater the signal, the greater the growth. Well, what we're learning is that there's a signal that comes long before that. And if you use tools like blood flow restriction training, or you use tools like electrostimulation, or you combine heat and cold therapies with resistance and conditioning therapies, you can really improve the efficiency. Again, economics, time invested versus return on investment. And again, with most athletes, they struggle for to have enough time. And so you've constantly got to be looking at, do I have an do is there a better way to do this? Is there a set of exercises that will give me the return that I'm looking for with an investment of 30 minutes of time rather than 2 hours? You know, we loved spending 2.5, 3 hours
Hmm.
in a weight room. It was fun. There was a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of sit around bullshitting kind of stuff. But at the same time,
Yeah.
if I can get in that room, get the work done, get the signal, and get out, so I can go do something else and improve recovery, it's going to be a better investment of time.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that because that happened to me today. I went to the gym with a friend of mine, um, and then we did a workout, we did some lifting, and then we went to the pool. We did a little bit of swimming there, and then we went to the sauna. And I actually I have a pretty close idea with what you said because for me it was like, man, I want to get out of here, like because I want to get this done and go home because I gotta do something else. And then my friend was on the phone, and then he was tired, and then he was just sitting down, and just like you said.
Yeah.
And then I told him like, hey, come on, we gotta go. Like we can just sit here for 3 hours and then get out of here and think that, oh my god, my day's so productive. No, you just waste time there. You weren't working out for 3 hours, you
Well, it
were
might have
working
been
for an
good for
hour,
him
but then you were
social.
on your phone, and then you
Yeah.
did this.
Might have been good for him socially, but you've got to prioritize. I
Hmm.
mean, what's good for them may not be the best for you, and as an athlete or as an individual, you've got to be able to look at this and have a good enough handle on your program that you say, listen, Igor, I don't train well with other people. I just don't. Um, you know,
Hmm.
coming up, most people don't want to train with me because they don't want to work that hard, or they're caught up in some program, and then I'm just not. It just isn't on my radar. So you've got to have a willingness to say, you know what, I'll see you later. We'll grab a bite to eat. But this workout's really important to me. I'm going to focus on doing it the way I think I should do it. If you want to come tag along, fine, but don't be an anchor to my boat. Um,
Yeah, I agree 100%. So for the people that are listening to us, they are trying to improve performance. You know, you mentioned a few things about getting light, sunlight, getting the right nutrients,
Mm-hmm.
and sleeping. But what are some general things that people should be doing right now that they can apply to their days right now, today, in order to improve, improve, in order to have a better performance? Besides having a better sleep, is there anything else that you think it's important that people should be doing?
Listen, you can't ignore movement, um, which involves exercise, which typically then gets broken down into strength and cardiovascular, because there is a difference. One is explosive, short term, higher, very high intensity. Cardiovascular tends to be lower intensity, longer period of time, but they're both critical. Whether you're an athlete or whether you're an athlete's parent and trying to age well, you have to invest in the development of what's called mitochondria. So your cell has a part of your cell generates energy. It's called a mitochondria, and you have to invest in this. So exercise at a zone 2, zone 3 level in a 5 zone system builds mitochondria in the cell. It's critical. The ability to produce energy as an athlete is a key performance indicator. That's why we measure things like VO2 and things like that. It's the ability to produce energy. Well, by the way, it's also going to be the thing that ends your life. That your life won't end when you run out of time. Your life will end when you run out of energy, which is a mitochondrial driven process. So you're constantly doing that to build mitochondrial efficiency. We have to take that when we start to roll into food. We start to understand this concept of what's called autophagy, which is a cellular cleaning process that's typically associated with fasting. Well, what we know is that there are nutrients that are critical in that fasting pathway, one of which we call spermidine. It's one of the things and again, this has been fun for me working for the company that I work for. We've known about this spermidine molecule for hundreds and hundreds of years. We just didn't know what it did. But in 2016, they gave a Nobel Prize to a Japanese researcher who described this cellular cleaning process of autophagy. When we exercise, we generate autophagy. When we fast, we generate autophagy. Autophagy is associated with long life. So nutrients, you got to have the right nutrients, practices and nutrients to go in. If you're lifting, you've got to have protein coming in so you can rebuild muscle. If you're doing exercise, I'm not a huge carbohydrate supplement guy, but understanding the role of ketones and fat metabolism is always good, because those ketones are signaling molecules, especially in the brain, and very effective. And then this all gets backed up in sleep and recovery. So if you do work, you have to have recovery. That recovery typically comes at night. So getting off of your devices, getting a regular sleep routine. We live in a society that has devalued sleep for a long time. Huge mistake. Okay, sleep is critical.
Hmm.
And then finally, like I said, you've got to get into the light during the day. You've got to get out, get that red light, sunlight, and at sunrise and sunset. This helps set that circadian rhythm, getting light on the skin. I don't know about you, but I feel the healthiest when my skin is brown. The browner my skin is, the better I feel. So I'm a huge melanin guy.
Yes.
So but that's a lot. Got to get my exercise in. I got to get my food choices right. I got to get my sleep right. I've got to get in light. Well, I've got all these distractions. I've got these things with TVs and so prioritizing for me. I started my seventh decade of life last year. Um, I turned I turned 60, and so I'm starting on my seventh decade. Um, and I'm enjoying it. I mean, we're having a lot of fun. My kid moved out of the house a little over a year ago. My wife and I call it my third of life. You spend your first third of life learning. You spend your second third serving others, school, work, things like that. but your third is your third. It's my third. And when my daughter moved out and got a job and not coming home anymore, my wife and I are on our third. It's our third, and I want this to be a great third of my life. I want to enjoy it, and so you can't do that if you're broken down and you can't move. You've got to constantly be investing in this and hacking it. You can hack this. This is a red light panel that you see over my shoulder here. So, and I spent 20 minutes in front of that this morning, feeding energy into my mitochondria. This is my sauna. So, you and I talked about, I live in an RV. My wife and I live in an RV and we travel all over the country. Part of moving into this RV was, can I do these things I need to do? I was in the sauna for 25 minutes last night. My wife is out on her Peloton bike right now, riding in the other room. You've got to engineer your environment to meet the needs, but we do that. Again, it's my purpose. I want to be that crazy 80-year-old. I want to be that guy that can still teach wrestling in 2 more decades.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like that's what performance is about, you know? It's about having a better life because nobody nobody likes to feel pain and to feel not happy, you know? And I think when you're striving and trying to thrive in a way, that's when you find happiness, you improve your performance, you become a better person for yourself, for people around you, and I think that's what performance is about, right?
I agree.
So that I love that. I love that. That's really good to hear. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about what the HRV is, and tell us a little bit about the product that you are developing, the HRV Plus?
So HRV stands for heart rate variability. And when we start talking about KPIs, key performance indicators, what HRV? It's a measurement of the difference in times between heartbeats. So if your heart beats 60 beats a minute, you expect beat, beat, beat. But with high variability, instead of having that rhythm, it's beep, 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 beep. It's still 60 beats a minute, but it's variable.
Hmm.
This tells you that your body, that the part of your body that's in charge of recovery, we call it the autonomic nervous system, the automatic nervous system. Um, when you have high variability, that means you have high resources in case there's a challenge. Now, if you're sitting around and a bear walks around the corner, your brain says, "Hey, that thing's a problem for you. You need to get out of here," and it starts dumping. It starts dumping signals into your body that tells your adrenals. Your adrenals make adrenaline, and they make cortisol, and it frees up energy, and it lights you up in order for you to get away from the bear. Well, when the bear comes around the corner, HRV goes down to very, very low, 8-10 milliseconds. Um, what we know is that when you die, your HRV is gone. So it goes to zero. So you're constantly working to
Hmm.
move HRV away from zero. And my very elite, when I was a sports scientist at Ohio State, what we found is that my best wrestlers had the highest HRV. And in fact, we got to the point to where when we sent our team to nationals in 2018, we sent all 10 starters, first time in school history. We had 8 All-Americans, the most in school history. But I could have told you the 2 guys that would not make All-American the first day of the tournament, because they did not have enough reserve. Their HRV was not high enough. They didn't have enough in reserve to win the 5 matches that you have to win to be an All-American. Um, and so,
Hmm.
and we had seen an indication of this in 16 and 17, and we were constantly working to build resilience in our athletes. For instance, we use sensory deprivation float tanks. Float tanks that their body, the water's full of salt, magnesium sulfate, and it's the same temperature as your body, and the air is the same temperature, and you pull the lid down, and you're in there, and all you have is your thoughts, your heartbeat, and your breath. It's an intense meditative environment. Um, we floated that
Hmm.
140 times that year, because float tanks move the needle in recovery. And so this is when HRV became a real KPI to me. I really started to understand it. We applied it at that level. Well, how do you build HRV? Cardiovascular exercise is really important. You want, as your cardiovascular system improves, there's more room between heartbeats, so there's more availability for variability. You have to have the right nutrients on board. If you don't have the
Mhm.
right nutrients on board, the body sees that as a stress and lowers your age and dumps resources so that you can go find the nutrients. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering. Okay. Period. End of story. And then finally, we know that when you get the right kind of light on your skin, it improves mitochondrial behavior, it improves HRV. So this ability to have resources, the necessary resources to train and compete, that's what HRV the variable is. And we measure it with wearable technology like Aura rings, cardio mood watches. There's also commercial HRV products like Omega Wave or First Beat or things like that. But we what we found is that the number one driver of poor HRV is inflammation. And inflammation a lot of times is related to omega-3 fat consumption, because when your cell inflammation is important in our bodies. It keeps us alive. That if we have a bacterial or a viral infection, we need inflammation to fight it off, but we then need that inflammation to resolve. We need it to finish up. The problem is that if I stay up watching TV with a lot of blue light at night and I throw off my circadian rhythm, I don't get the inflammatory process improving. If I don't have omega 3s, I don't get the process improving. So, and then we also found is that your body has part of its nervous system that's called the endocannabinoid system, the internal cannabinoid system. Igor, one of the benefits of exercise is you produce a ligand, you produce a little molecule that's called anandamide. Anandamide is called an endocannabinoid. It alleviates anxiety. Okay. So if you're anxious, it's not because you have too much
Mhm.
sugar, it's because you're not moving enough. Okay. Anxious is your body's signal to move, to produce anandamide and lower that. Well, what we know, we named the endocannabinoid system over after cannabis, the research we did there. And what we know is that we can use cannabis extracts very strategically, not get the high that comes with THC, but rather work with other cannabinoids, CBD,
Mhm.
CBDA, beta caryophyllene, and improve HRV. And so that's when we developed this product. It's called HRV Plus. Um, the first thing that people notice when they take it is their sleep improves. So, a lot of times people don't sleep well because they have that racing brain. Well, that's anxiety. That's the body saying, go move. Um, well, if you get your cannabinoids up a little bit, it'll help with that racing brain and establish a good night's sleep. It lowers inflammation with the omega 3s and what's called specialized pro resolving mediators that we put into it as well. So it is a nutritional supplement to assist in the recovery process. It's not a silver bullet. Don't get me. I'm not suggesting you take this and you become an Olympian. Um,
Mhm.
what I'm saying is that in the process, a lot of times there'll be a disconnect at sleep and nutritive levels. And if you go ahead and use a little bit of supplementation, it can be beneficial there.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to try it out because I feel like it would be really, really beneficial for me because I feel like you were describing myself when you were saying it. So
Do you
I
measure
think I
HRV?
think I'll definitely need to give it a try.
Do you measure HRV, Igor?
I never. No, I
This is
don't.
probably something to explore. And do you have a heart rate monitor by chance?
I don't, but I can definitely get one if I need
This
to because
you can go onto Amazon if you just want to experiment with this. You can go onto Amazon and order from Amazon what's called a Polar H10. It's a heart rate transmitter that you can put around your chest. There are apps. Well, and I'll tell you, there's an even simpler. There's a group out there that's called HRV for Training. It's an app, and you can use the camera on your phone with a finger, and you can start to measure HRV first thing in the morning. Now that's my second favorite time to measure. I like wearables, things like an Aura ring. This is a ring that you'll see on the inside is full of technology. It measures sleep and HRV and body temperature. I think this is a really good tool. There's another company that's coming out of the Netherlands. This is a wearable. You'll see the back of it has a ton of technology on it. This is called Now,
Mm-hmm.
Nowatch. Now, I love the hardware. I'm still waiting on a software update from them before I give them the full, this is where you go. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's worth watching. And I think they'll have this software relatively soon. But whether it's Aura Ring or HRV for training, or get a heart rate transmitter, and there's an app that's called Elite HRV. Um, it's a free app that you can put your heart rate transmitter on and get a good heart rate variability measure. This is the place to start to play around and learn about it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's good. That's a lot of insights and a lot of information. I'm sure people will improve their performance right away once they listen to this
Once they
episode.
start recovering,
Um,
once
well
yeah, once
done.
they start recovering, they'll start getting better. I mean, everyone trains hard.
Yeah.
Not everybody
Mm-hmm.
gives themselves the grace of recovery, and so do that. And HRV is a great tool to measure that with, and HRV plus is again the people that the first thing we hear is when they try HRV plus is, man, my sleep was amazing, and I'm like, perfect, because in the absence of good sleep
Mm-hmm.
we can't move the needle anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's good, and we need to emphasize that every time more and more because I don't think, especially people my age and athletes that are doing college sports right now, they don't take it serious. We hear about it, but I don't think they really do what they need to do in order to perform better in school and in sports. So
Igor, we have data that showed, and
don't
Igor,
yeah.
we have data that shows that if you drink 4 beers before you go to bed, it cuts your recovery in half. So 8 hours of sleep gives you 4 hours of recovery because of the alcohol. Now, listen, as an athlete, I enjoyed myself quite a bit. And what I knew is that I
Mhm.
could, I could show up for a 6 o'clock practice many times. It was usually a running practice, and I could probably still be intoxicated. And I could still do the practice and I could get through it. And I thought, well, shit, I could do the practice. I must be fine. I didn't realize, I didn't realize the amount of recovery I was missing. Now, listen, I had a good career, and I don't, again, regrets not a favorite emotion of mine. Um, but
Yeah.
you pay a price, and when you put a metric on it, you can really start to see, am I moving the needle on this or not? And that's a good thing to do.
Hmm. Awesome. Um, well done. My last question for you, it's a question that we always ask our guest speakers because I feel like every other topic that we have here, it's related to it. And it's what's your definition of success?
Wow. Um, Definition of success is really, am I able to move the needle on a daily basis towards this goal of improved longevity? you know, I don't, I rarely compete anymore. That we had a situation with a company I worked with a few years ago. We had this intra-team competition going on with minutes in the zone measuring heart rate, and I don't like to lose, and there is a side of me
Hmm.
that, frankly, I was able to put into a box a few years ago, and I don't let out very often. Now, so the question is, am I able to change the life? Let me go back to this, Igor. My personal mission: helping individuals understanding the changes necessary to alleviate suffering and contribute to the betterment of well people. That's my personal mission. I'll say it again: helping individuals understand changes necessary to alleviate suffering and contribute to the betterment of well people. If I can go to bed every night having contributed to my personal mission, I think that's success. Um, and that's what I wake up and do.
Awesome. I I love that. And I've said this many times in here. The reason I ask these questions is because everyone has a different definition of success, and every time I hear a different definition, it feels right, you know. And what you said, it makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah, well, I appreciate, Don. Thanks for everything that you share, all the information about performance. As I mentioned, I think people can definitely, you know, do something right now at the moment in order to improve their performance, and that's what I love this topic, because they can definitely go to bed right now. Not right now. They can definitely try to get a better sleep, get some sunlight, eat a better food, and then get some movement in, and improve their performance right away. Of course, there's levels and levels, as we mentioned, but well, thank you so much for all the information.
Thanks, Igor, and thanks for the opportunity. If someone wants to reach out, you can find me on LinkedIn, Don Moxley on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter, or whatever we call that now. Um, that's where I tend to push information. And my Instagram is also Don Moxley. That's mainly family stuff. You don't see a lot of performance stuff there. And if you have questions, I usually accept most of my Instagram invitation. Oh, excuse me, I accept most of my LinkedIn invitations, unless you have a note that, hey, the system put us together, you seem like a nice guy, and then I won't accept it. If you
Yeah,
ask an authentic question, I'll accept it.
awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Don.
Thanks, Igor.